Thank you, Marianne. Kind of coming back full circle to DAFNI and what we're doing on DAFNI is our DAFNI. I thought I would give a little bit more information about this project called OpenCLIM, which we've been starting over the last year. And I think, unlike Fred, I think I thought I had longer than I have, so I'll try to be brief. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about this project called OpenCLIM, which stands for the Open Climate Impacts Modeling Framework. You might notice I've added to the bottom of my slides yet another logo, which is the NERC, who are the funders of this project, and a little bit about what DAFNI is doing in this project. So OpenCLIM is a project that started last year, last August, and runs until November 22. And it's part of the of NERC's program, which is working with other government agencies looking towards future impact of climate change. In particular, its goal is to, as part of a program which is delivering assessment methods to the climate change risk assessment, CCRA4, which I believe is taking place in 2023, I think it is, which is the sort of the next major exercise of looking at what are the likely effects of climate change on the UK and how the country might adapt what it does to accommodate those various scenarios. So what we're trying to do in OpenCLIM is to develop and implement an advanced open integrated spatial model framework so that we can provide risk assessments and adaptation evaluations into that process. It's meant to sort of take over from, well, or supplement existing efforts from various agencies that do this, often in a very closed way using consultants, etc. This is meant to be using the sort of the benefits of DAFNI as we presented earlier, to provide an open environment and a legacy environment where these things can be hosted and executed in common, and in a way that people can come back to them later and rerun them on different scenarios, for example. So as part of it, we want to link those state-of-the-art models into an integrated framework. As I said, it's part of a national assessment or towards its national assessment. So we've been, from the beginning, we've had inputs from a large number of stakeholders, particularly the Climate Change Commission, DEFRA, and the devolved governments. So we've had stakeholder workshops with all of them, and they're very actively involved in the project. The framework is meant to cover the whole. Can apply to any region or any part of the United Kingdom. But we, as exemplars, we are doing 2 case studies to explore results in more detail with particular focus groups of stakeholders. One in the Norfolk Broads, led by the Broads Authority, and one in the Clyde catchment, with Climate Ready Clyde being a lead stakeholder, kind of organising the stakeholder group there. And on the right-hand side, I give the project partners, led by Robert Nichols from the University of East Anglia at the Tyndall Centre, and a group with Newcastle we work very closely with, Bristol, CEH, ourselves, and Sayers and Associate, who are a subcontracting small company. So what the project is trying to do, I'll run this very quickly because it takes a number of climate scenarios. What are the future projections and various models involved with that, particularly UK CP18 data, which is called pre-computed scenarios, which are widely available from the Met Office. A number of social and economic scenarios, and then taking those through what that does on the physical processes in the environment, and then taking a number of different risks associated with those climate change scenarios. And an important part of the project is this notion of adaptation. What do we do if we change the physical environments? What does that do to the risks? And particularly looking at things like bioadaptations, planting more trees, in upland areas, allowing lowland areas to flood more easily, those sorts of things which modify the responses and modify the risks. This is the project is concentrating on a number of different topic areas. Here on the left, biodiversity and land cover, urban development, agriculture, heat stress, inland flooding, not sea flooding, that's deliberately missed out, and drought and water supply. And for each one of these topic areas, we're going through a sort of requirements capture with our stakeholders on what are the hazards and what are the risks associated with them. So this is one for fluvial flooding. And then we have a significant number of candidate models which have already been sort of put forward as suitable models by the partnership to take to be part of this framework. So where have we got to? Well, we've been doing about 8 or 9 months now, and we've been doing a lot of this requirements analysis and capturing various scenarios, particularly trying to capture them in workflows connecting different data and models together. So this is one on the heat scenario, heat stress scenario. So topping here, we're taking UKCP 18A data, so climate change predictions, passing through and some socioeconomic data, passing that through a heat model, looking at what the extreme heat events that may occur as a result of in those scenarios, and then pass them to various other systems. Arcadia, for example, was looking at things like residential discomfort, are houses becoming too hot to live in, and indeed mortality associated with heat events, and then sort of using that as a valuation of heat risk, and then bringing in sort of urban models here to see how different urban scenarios affect those results, to give an overall view of heat risk. And we're also looking to bring in another model which is to do with livestock, so how heat event affects livestock, so tying into the agricultural scenario there. How this kind of directly results with DAFNI? Well, capturing those workflows, we want to get those workflows, those models and data onto DAFNI so we can provide that as a common point, as a framework for combining those models together, a place where users can access and run those models, a legacy where models can be accessed for the long term. And I'm going to run through the next few slides a different scenario we've been working on, which our colleagues in Newcastle have been working on. So the next few slides are particularly this group of people here, and this is sort of a general workflow they want to aim for. Again, on the top right here, we have different climate change prediction scenarios, looking at various parameters which are from those scenarios. And on the right here, we have, again, urban development model, looking at how urban areas change and develop, and looking at the buildings, and then combining those two in a number of different, well, these are different models associated with river flows and flooding and flood events. So CityCAT is looking at city catchments and Flood Explorer to give us a notion of flood risk metrics. And then we would look at adaptations that we would put into our urban environment. It's talking about greaved roofs which soak up water, and then see how that changes the scenario. So this is one of the earlier scenarios, workflows, and this is one of the first ones that we're beginning to get onto DAFNI now. So, and also an example where we've been looking at those particular use cases, in this particular case in the Clyde catchment. So this is sort of initial run of part of that workflow, particularly the CityCAT part. So a simple initial workflow where we set up the CityCAT model, we set it up with particular regions, looking at particular 100-year flood events, I think this is, for a number of hours in a particular region, bring in a number of data sets into that model, notably UKCP 18 data, and some building data. This moment is some sample building data. We would expect this to be replaced by the output of the urban development model in future, and some terrain information on the Clyde. And then in the next one, we are setting up the output of that CityCAT. We're looking at impacts. So this is looking at essentially the depth of flooding that occurs, and there's some extra information coming from master map on this ordnance service master map. This time focusing on the city of Glasgow, and then the visualization step. So taking out the two particular data sets which arise from that, the execution of the CityCAT, particularly the which buildings and floods roads have been inundated, what is the flood depth, and then using Jupyter notebooks, and again in this case to build some visualizations to give us eventually, well, I think this has actually been taken out of DAFNI and put in a different visualization tool, but nevertheless giving a picture of where the flood risks are, in this case in central Glasgow. So that kind of gives just a quick picture of what we're trying to do OpenClim. It's still a very much an ongoing project. We're looking to develop those scenarios in much more detail. And one thing that I think we're particularly interested in is sort of generalizing our framework. We're finding that the ways that you can combine these things together, we want to be able to do in much more flexible and generic ways. So that's something that we will be looking at. Yeah, so I think this is early stages of what looks like to us a really interesting project. So I'm hoping we're going to get good results over the next year.